Roman society. Under Herod's rule, the blending of Roman and Edomite influences further eroded the spiritual and moral fabric of the nation. Conclusion. Jesus' warning about the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod is a call to vigilance against the corrupting influences that can permeate religious and political leadership. The infiltration of Edomites into the priesthood and Herod's reign over Israel exemplify how foreign and corrupt elements can take root and lead to spiritual and moral decline. For the Israelites, this leaven represented a departure from their covenant relationship with God and a move toward a corrupted form of worship and governance, which Jesus sought to correct through his teachings and ministry. The leaven of the Pharisees. The Pharisees were the religious leaders of the time, known for their strict adherence to the law of Moses. However, Jesus often criticized them for their hypocrisy, legalism, and lack of genuine faith. The leaven of the Pharisees refers to their corrupt practices, which included a focus on outward appearances, self-righteousness, and a failure to understand the true spirit of God's commandments. The leaven of Herod, representing the political power of the time, symbolized the worldly influence and the dangers of political corruption. The leaven of Herod can be understood as the secular and immoral influence that sought to undermine true faith and righteousness. Herod's dynasty, rooted in Idumean Edomite descent, was known for its collaboration with Roman authorities and its moral compromises. Jesus' warning. Jesus' warning to his disciples was to be vigilant against the subtle and pervasive influences that could lead them away from the truth. The combination of religious hypocrisy, the Pharisees, and political corruption, Herod, represented significant threats to the purity of their faith and mission. By warning against these influences, Jesus emphasized the importance of maintaining spiritual integrity and resisting the temptations of both religious legalism and worldly power. And he charged them, saying, "Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, and of the leaven of Herod." Mark 8:15, KJV. Let's dive into the concept of leaven, flour, and baking as it's used symbolically in Scripture, and how it relates to the leaven of Herod and the Edomites, which Christ calls out as a sign of Satan's influence in Mark 8:15. Monologue. The symbolism of leaven and the warning of Herod's influence. Leaven, or yeast, plays a crucial role in baking. It's a small, almost invisible substance mixed into flour that causes the dough to rise and expand. In biblical times, leaven was often seen as a symbol of something that spreads silently, affecting the entire mixture, whether for good or bad. In a physical sense, it's a vital ingredient in baking bread, but spiritually, it takes on a much deeper meaning. When Jesus warns in Mark 8:15, "Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod," he's using leaven as a metaphor for corrupting influences. Just as a small amount of yeast quietly spreads throughout the dough, so too can evil influences, false doctrines, sinful practices, and spiritual decay slowly permeate a community or a nation. In particular, the leaven of Herod and the Edomites represents the subtle, creeping influence of wickedness that had infiltrated the leadership of Judea. The Edomites, the descendants of Esau, were long-standing enemies of Jacob Israel. Through a forced conversion, as Josephus tells us, they were integrated into the nation of Judah during the time of John Hyrcanus. However, this didn't mean they became spiritually pure. Instead, their presence became like leaven, quietly spreading a corrupting influence among the people, blending with the nation, and distorting the true message of God's covenant with Israel. The leaven of Herod represents more than just political intrigue. It symbolizes the blending of worldly power, corruption, and spiritual degradation.